The last few months have been wild for Dr. Morgan and myself, and as we kick off season 4 of the Healthy as a Mother podcast, we wanted to share our updates, the struggles we have both been going through, and share what prompted our extended break in this podcast. Although we know a lot about fertility, pregnancy, birth, and postpartum between the two of us, it doesn't mean we are immune from the struggle within those seasons. In fact, it's because of our struggles that we are often able to help and bring support to women just like you because we get it. Without further ado, let's get started. Welcome to Healthy as a Mother, the podcast for becoming and being a mother, with your co-hosts, Dr. Leah Gordon and Dr. Morgan McDermott, two naturopathic doctors who get it.
Each week, we teach you how to be the healthiest mother you can be, from fertility and preconception to pregnancy and birth prep, through postpartum and throughout motherhood, empowering you with the natural health guidance and education you're not getting elsewhere, so you can confidently navigate the broken system at large.
The real, the raw, the untalked about. And remember, this information is not intended to diagnose, treat, or manage any disease. Always consult with your doctor before making any changes.
Oh my goodness, long time no see, long time no hear.
I know.
Okay, here we are at the start of our 4th season, and we wanted to just do like a little life update episode to kick it off because there has been so much that's gone on in these last couple of months for both you and I over this winter. And, we wanted to explain sort of where we're at, what's been happening, because we feel like a lot of you will relate to it as well. And just part of our intention with this podcast, right, is connecting with and being relevant voices to other mothers and people building their families and giving the advice that we can, the best top tips and everything. But, we're not immune to the challenge that also comes with this. And so for both of us, I feel like we've just been really put through the ringer, and it's, going to come with more growth and there's benefits, but man, it's really tricky when we're in the moment. So we needed to take some more time off between our seasons. We'll explain that as well. And we're excited to be back, but man, it's been
a wild last few months, to say the least.
Yeah. So why don't you walk us through what's been going on?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll share my update. The last few months have been really intense. I mean, it started out last summer when my husband basically had a mental breakdown, and that's what sort of prompted us to start the ball rolling on moving to Idaho. And that was intense, at that time. And we kind of knew what was needed and coming, but it wasn't planned. We weren't like, oh, here's our plan from a year ago, and now it's starting to unravel. We made the decision to move and put our house on the market within just like 2 weeks. And then that process was crazy and intense, selling a house in California, trying to find a house in Idaho. And I, on the fertility front, went in May of 2023, so, a year and a half ago, to try to start the process of transferring our next embryo so that we could continue to grow our family. And I found out then that because I had a C-section, I had to do more imaging to make sure that my transfer would be successful, because according to my doctor, having a C-section makes embryo transferring more complicated, which I didn't know about.
Is that because of where it wants to implant, like along the scar line?
Yeah. So basically, they cut, your uterus open, and depending on how the C-section heals and any other kind of scar tissue or other things that have formed there, it can negatively impact future transfers.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I had to do like a saline ultrasound and make sure everything looked okay. And at the time, he said, yes, actually, your C-section looks good, but you have another polyp.
Oh.
And so I had already had a polyp removed before I transferred my daughter, Avia. And I had grown another one in postpartum, which is crazy. That's my estrogen levels for you. And so here I was thinking in May that I was going to get ready to go and transfer. And instead I had to do imaging to rule out an issue. Then I had a polyp, and then I had to do another DNC, or I had to have a DNC planned prior to my next transfer. And it was right at this time that Mike had the breakdown that we decided that we needed to move. So it didn't feel appropriate for me to transfer the embryo. And I basically had my DNC scheduled and I had to cancel it because once you do a DNC, which is where they kind of scrape out your uterus to remove the polyp, you really only have like a 3-month window where it's ideal post procedure, and it's a $5,000 procedure and you have to go under anesthesia. It's like everything that has to do with IVF is just complicated, and it has to be at a certain time of your cycle. And it was just getting really complicated. And I felt like I didn't even know where I was going to be. Was I going to be in California? Was I going to be in Idaho? What's going on? So I decided to cancel it in August. And we started this initiation process of moving, and it was really wild and crazy. And at the same time, my daughter was kind of going through regressions and not sleeping well. And I was trying to do work. We were trying to finish podcast stuff and finishing my courses and
Yeah, and you were
preparing.
launching your fertility formula. It was
Yeah,
like
yeah, it was.
everything was
It,
coming to a head.
yeah, and I thought I would have my childcare support, my nanny, but because we decided to move and so quickly, we just felt, both of us, intuitively that we needed to move quickly, even though that definitely added its own form of stress onto us. Um, Waiting longer didn't feel good for whatever reason. And I trusted my husband and I trusted his intuition and my own as well. But it definitely added a lot to the situation. So we ended up moving in September, and I no longer had my nanny. I had no childcare. My daughter wasn't sleeping. She wasn't napping. It was really intense. And at the same time, I'm now trying to coordinate going back to California for my transfer. And,
Well,
I,
and let me too just say you went back, both of you and Mike went back
yes,
to California multiple times for different work related things because you'd already had some like, pre-planned responsibilities
yeah,
in LA, and then
it
he had
was
to go back for
wild.
his work. And then so
Yeah.
you guys were like trading and juggling and going back and forth. And it was like, then you were supposed to have your DNC in October, or then you were supposed to have it in
Hmm.
this month. And it was just like kept getting pushed back. And you and I didn't even really see each other all that much because
No.
I was at the end of my pregnancy. And then you guys were like, every day I felt like there was just jam packed to the gills of all these different things going on. And it was sad. I wish I could have helped you more, but
It's
it was just
okay.
a really intense time. I mean, and watching you go through it too, I was like, dang, you are like
Yeah.
in it.
No, it was really intense. And yeah, it was like my work had all of these prior obligations that I couldn't just walk away from. We had podcast things that we had to do. I had course things that I had to do. I work for another company creating a course for them that I had deliverables that I had to deliver. And on top of it, no childcare, going back and forth to California, my husband, having meetings with investors and all of the things that he has to do for his work. And it was honestly insane. And, there were times in the fall where I would reach out to people because, like, I'm not a person who drops the ball. I'm not a person who doesn't follow through with what I say. And I literally couldn't. And, I told people, it's like, I am not this person, but I literally can't do this. I
Yeah.
literally can't. It is impossible for me to do XYZ, and I'm so sorry. It was just like I felt so bad apologizing every step of the way. And I'm so aware and conscious usually of not allowing life to get so wild and crazy, but moving is just intense. Doing all of the stuff and prep for the holidays, and then you getting ready for your birth, not necessarily knowing when that's coming. And so, at that time, I also took most of the podcasting stuff over. And
All
it
of it.
was,
No, not most of it, all of it. I was like, hey, here you go, Leah. I'm done. I can't do this anymore.
it's okay. So I'm just like
Sorry.
juggling all of this. It was because we don't have anyone that helps us currently. I have one VA and she's amazing, but she's also pregnant and, getting ready for maternity leave. And it was just like, it's nuts being a female and doing all of these things. And, all I wanted to do was like stay at home and bake bread, but there were so many things to do. And then I had to go back to California for my DNC. And then I had to come back again, because you have to wait a while. I had to take pharmaceutical hormones, which I was trying so hard not to do because he needed my cycle to be at a certain time. And I hated that. I hated having to take it, called Oralisa, which basically blocks your hormones so that they can kind of start your cycle when they need to. And I do everything in my power to try to do IVF as natural as possible. And it's just hard, in
Did
certain
you have
circumstances.
did you have symptoms from Oralisa?
Immediately, no. But my next cycle, I was having a lot of ovarian pain. So I feel like, because it's like birth control in the sense that it drops your hormones. And so I think personally that I had a rebound, like a resurge of hormones, where I had almost like too much hormones coming back. Because when you suppress your pituitary gland like that, sometimes when the hormones try to come back on board, they like overcompensate. And then I'll get to it because I had the weirdest cycle of my life in January, and I've never had anything like that before. So it's so hard to know, like, could it have been the Oralisa or not? There's so many other factors involved. But yeah, I definitely had some issues, and I've had 2 migraines since. So I used to get migraines back when I was a teenager and a young adult, but they really went away for the most part. And I've had 2 since I took those medications. So again, it's so hard to know, but they definitely seem hormonally driven. And, it's like there's no crystal ball that you could ever know, but I've had 2 migraines to throw in on top of that the last 2 months, which were hormonally related based on where my cycle was. So basically, we went back for the DNC in October. And then were giving birth in October. It was so hard. And then prepping for Black Friday, because that's when everyone like sells things and has sales. And this was all happening at the same time. And here I was like doing a bunch of quote unquote things. And this is something that I want to share with people. And what I hope they relate to is I feel like sometimes we get into these grooves where our life is actually so stressful, but it becomes almost normalized where we're like, it's not that bad. I'm still eating 3 meals a day. I'm still sleeping, at night somewhat, as long as my daughter was sleeping. That actually wasn't happening for a while. But once it's like when I go to acupuncture, I don't realize how stressed I am until I'm pulled into a state of extreme relaxation. And then you realize the stark difference between your day-to-day life and that, no, I'm not living in a stress-free way. This is actually incredibly stressful. It's just people who have, we've been through medical school, we've been through motherhood, lots of things. You just kind of acclimate in a way to be like, this is just normal. And I see that in my patients a lot, where I'm like, are you stressed? And they're like, no, but I'll have them tell me about their life. And it's like, there's no way that your body is not feeling that. There's no way.
Well, and I think that you and I too tend to be the kind of people that, not that we like stress, not that we're comfortable in that. I do think we are comfortable in it though. We're
Mm-hmm.
both those types of people who are always high achieving, since junior high, high school days, and it just has never stopped. We just went to
Yeah.
college and then to medical school and then having kids and then starting businesses and blah, 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 blah. There's literally never been a break. There's never been a time where we had just like one sole thing to focus on. There's always been multiple layers, and it just gets more and more complicated and complex as you have more children too, and
Mm-hmm.
then without the support. And I guess this is all to just say that, like, we see you if you're trying to work or start a business and you're with your kids and you're doing this, or maybe you're not, even you're just with your kids all day. Like, that is so hard too. It's like, it is, and it's amazing obviously, but it is not to say that it's easy.
Well, and infertility, people who are listening to this who are going through infertility, I've done a lot in my life. We both have, we could look at the things we have accomplished and what we have done, and it is amazing. Yet a healer told me this during my infertility, because I'm still in infertility, right? It's like I feel like I've accomplished infertility because I had a child, which I did, but like we have to go through it all again to have more children. But the background noise for me, at least, of infertility made everything so much harder. And I remember having breakdowns with one of my friends who's a healer, and I would go to him a lot. And I would just be like, why does this feel so hard? Like, why does my business feel so hard? Why does everything feel so hard? And, he told me, because he's intuitive, and he's like, because the infertility is like shrouding everything in this cloud that just makes everything harder.
Yeah.
And it was just hard to accept, because infertility is like a silent thing. It's like you can't see it. People don't understand it. It doesn't seem like it should be something that impacts or affects you, but it does. And it can be all consuming, even if it's not, the many scheduled appointments and all of the things that you're trying to do and constantly trying to navigate in battle. It's just like the energetic drain of it, knowing that it's there in the background. And so, you know, this fall, it just kind of all came to a head because I'm also still trying to grow our family. And, I have moments of emotion that come up where I get angry, where it's like, here I am trying to move to this place for my family to have a better life. And I would love to have another child, something that feels like it should be a birthright. We should be able to just reproduce. That's like the basic level of human life, right? If we couldn't do that, we wouldn't exist anymore. And the fact that I have to be conscious of it all the time and travel back and forth and navigate all of these different procedures and appointments and, $5,000 here. And, it's just like every time I open my computer, there's another bill from my doctor. That's insane. People balk at like the prices of our courses and stuff. It's like, did you know that one ultrasound that I do is the cost of my entire fertility course?
Right.
And we do like 10 every cycle. It's just
Yes.
crazy. And so that's frustrating to be like, I wish I could just get pregnant on my own, and that brings up its own stuff. So the fall was crazy. And in hindsight, given everything I was doing, I should have known that trying to do a transfer in the midst of all of that was unwise. And it just felt, and I've seen this in patients before, and, it's just so hard when you're in it to see how clear it probably is to somebody else. But we had tried in May, it was November. It felt like so much time was going by. And
And when you want to be pregnant again, you want like a newborn in your arms yesterday. Like you
yeah.
don't want to have to keep waiting. You just have to keep waiting. You had to keep waiting. You had to keep pushing it back and pushing it back. And so, you made this date in November.
Yeah. And a part of me, I told Mike, I was like, I'm so stressed. I don't think I can do this. Like this, I need to wait, until January, February. And bless his heart, Mike wanted this baby a year ago. He would have babies. Like I'm the one that was like, I don't know if I'm quite ready yet, and that's why we delayed it till to May. But now it's been, 6 months or more. And he's just like, there's always going to be something. That's what he told me. He's like, in January, you're going to be stressed because of something else. And in February, it's going to be like, there's always going to be something. Happens, And I get that. And looking back, it was too much. It was too intense. There was too much going on. And so I said, okay, if I can get myself together, by the time of this transfer that was scheduled in November, I'll do it. And so I like really tried to like get stuff under control and like, try to get my stress under control. But again, it's like, oh, I've had a week of like less stress. I've had 6 months of intensity. But at the end of the day, we flew to California, and it's so hard too because I'm so sensitive to toxins. I'm sensitive to fragrance and mold. I was exposed to mold a couple times this fall in some of my travels back to California. And, that stresses you out, even if you don't get sick from it, which I do, just the thought of it. And so telling this story back, looking back, it's like I should have probably never transferred in November, but we did. And trying to find a safe place to even stay, a safe Airbnb or a safe hotel, I can't even tell you. I mean, I literally felt like when I went back to California that every place is so toxic. I couldn't believe it, how much mold there was in hotel rooms and
Well,
in
and for people who
Airbnbs.
don't know, because this is not something that I can sense, but if you've been sensitized to mold before, it is, and where you had gotten sick from the mycotoxins at some point, you're sort of like this canary in the coal mine every time you're re-exposed to it, and you can smell it, or maybe your body has certain symptoms that are really like your mold triggers, your mold symptoms. And I mean, unfortunately, the Airbnb world is sort of like the Uber world where they have those Glade freaking plugins everywhere.
And
There's
the cleaning products are
yes,
so toxic.
so toxic. So everywhere you went, there was like you could sense it was like an old moldy hotel
Yeah.
or an Airbnb that was super laden with artificial fragrances, which really do trip you out. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not a small thing. These are these types of environmental insults to our system that and for certain people too that are really really significant. So
Yeah. Yeah. I'm highly sensitive to them. It's not just like in my head, where I have anxiety. Like I get dizzy, I get nauseous. I mean, To me, the worst form of torture would be to be placed in a room with Glade plugins, Febreze, and like Pine Sol and just sit
Oh,
there. Like, I would rather have my fingernails pulled off.
oh my
I'm like,
gosh.
it's like, to me, it is the worst thing in the world. I can't even tell you like the level of illness that I feel, let alone knowing what it does to my, to babies who are in the womb. And so it's like, I remember, so I go for this transfer and I was doing a natural transfer. So they're tracking my cycle and they track my ovulation. In Idaho, we having winter storms. So I remember one of the days that I'm driving to get my blood work done. My husband's not even in town because he's out of town. I'm driving and it is really slick and so scary and all the cars are slipping around me, which I grew up in Colorado, so I'm used to driving in the snow, but I'm like driving to get my blood work done and just like shaking because everyone around me is like slipping and sliding. And that was just like so scary. So it's like everywhere I turn, it's not like I can just stay at home and like eat sourdough bread and have sex with my husband and like we wake up pregnant. It's like I have to go out into the elements and do all of these things. So in California, I did my transfer, but during the transfer, the catheter got stuck on my C-section scar. And he's like, "Oh, this is weird." And he's talking about how like my uterus is twisted, how it wasn't before, because he's, the same doctor who did my transfer with Avia. And so things just don't seem like they're going well, with transferring this embryo. And it's so hard. You just go into the lab and they, insert the embryo and you just pray that it's going to work. Let's take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsors. Did you know that 97% of women in the US take a prenatal supplement, yet 95% plus are still deficient in key nutrients? My favorite prenatal is from a company called Needed because they dose nutrients at levels to not just meet the bare minimum as most prenatals do. They actually use form of nutrients and dosages that allow mama and baby to thrive. Needed actually approached me years ago and asked me if I could help them design the perfect prenatal because they knew that the current prenatals available were not actually helping women. We spent over 3 years diving into the research and understanding what practitioners are seeing and what women actually need at this important season before we formulated this amazingly supportive option. It's no wonder over 4,000 practitioners now recommend Needed, something I am very proud of. If you have followed me for a while, you know that prenatals and optimizing nutrients starts long before pregnancy, so no matter where you are along your fertility or motherhood journey, Needed is the brand I recommend. Head to thisisneeded.com and use code HEALTHYMOTHER to save 20% on your first order. Again, visit thisisneeded.com and use code HEALTHYMOTHER to save 20%. Okay, back to the show. Granted, we chose one of our embryos that is classified as CC, which isn't super high quality. But we were trying to give it a chance and see if she would take. It was our last girl. And so just even after that transfer, I was trying so hard to keep my stress down, but we literally had to leave 3 hotels and Airbnbs because they were moldy or toxic post-transfer.
Yeah,
So
I've like never heard of that. I feel like everything that was going on was just
it was all wrong.
battles. It was like you were just like fighting battles the whole time.
It was crazy. And I was trying so hard. And, I have my daughter with us. So she's like crying in the background. We're trying to find a place to go, and I'm trying just so hard to keep things under control. And because we were still in the middle of moving to Idaho, I had to drive one of our cars back to Idaho. And so I had already driven one of our cars from California to Idaho. And we kept a car in California so that when we came back from my transfer, we had a car. My husband can't drive them because he has a bad back. And I didn't really want to fly post-transfer because I know that the rates of miscarriage and losing babies and things can go up, in early pregnancy with flying. It's not guaranteed, and there's ways that you can support it. But I ended up having to drive back a few days later. My family was in town in California for Thanksgiving. It was just like a lot happening. And I drove with my mom back to Idaho, and I could have swore I was pregnant. I was nauseous. I felt weird. I was so tired. But they gave me a shot of HCG after my transfer. And, I was just acting as if I was, if someone had said, were you pregnant? I would have been like 100%. And I remember I was sitting on the couch, it makes me want to cry, when I got the call after I had done my blood work that it didn't work. The transfer failed. And I just like lost it. It was just like so much work. So many things had been done up to this point to try to make this happen. And, it was just devastating that that hadn't happened, and I hadn't lost an embryo before, and I've never had a miscarriage because I've never been pregnant outside of the one time with IVF, because my husband and I can't get pregnant naturally. So it was just terrible. And you came over. You were so sweet and held me while I cried. And it was like probably the hardest I've cried in ever. I mean, it was just devastating, because I really thought I was, and I wasn't. So that was really tough. And then we went right into the holidays. And, it was what it was. And it was bittersweet, to be with my family in our new home, but to also not be pregnant when I really thought I would be. And then we were getting ready to transfer in January because I've done my DNC. So only so many months can go by before that's kind of not helpful anymore. So I, was doing my monitoring in January for my transfer. And my doctor basically said that my hormones were not looking good. I've never had this pattern before, but my LH was much higher than my FSH. My follicle wasn't growing at the rate he wanted it to. I ended up ovulating later in the cycle, but he didn't like that. He wanted me to ovulate sooner. And so we had to cancel that transfer. And it's just been like one thing after another. And it's been hard. I've pulled back significantly on seeing a lot of my infertility patients the last few months because it is triggering and it's hard. And I hold space for people who are going through the same or similar things, but it's hard when you're also right in it at the same time and dealing with your own losses and your own grief. And so, the decision for us to take a break on the podcast was just like you had just given birth, like at the end of October. I think we got it through November, but I was like, I can't do this anymore. I need a break. After my failed transfer, I was like, I just can't. I can't keep recording podcasts right now. I can't be on social media. I can't do this. I need a break. So we took a break mid-December until the end of January, and that was really, really healing for me, which was great. But it's been a really, really wild ride, which is why I haven't been very present on social media. And I needed to go inward. And I think that there are seasons for that. And it's hard being a content creator and being a person who's, in the public eye in that way where it feels like you can't take a break from work. Like, what are you doing? But it's like, well, I don't care. I have to because this is my life.
And I'm really glad you did. I think you really needed that. I mean, winter also, just the season and energy of winter, it felt like it was all happening and it was just pulling, like a hibernation of sorts and pulling back from everything to do with any of these things that were putting your energy out, so that you could just go back in and heal and kind of process what happened, because it was like boom, 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 one thing after another, after another, after another. Okay, we're gonna do this transfer, blah, blah, blah. And then it was like, it seemed like it all exploded when if you had been pregnant, it would have been crazy in its own different way. Kind of like, again, that sort of continuation, like you were mentioning before, how we're just sort of used to that. Like one thing just flows into the next, and it's always there's something, and da 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 da. And like, you would have been dealing with your nausea and everything like that. But because it didn't, it was sort of like, whoa, pump the brakes. What is going on? What has happened these last couple of months? And then, not at all like this is something that is helpful, but it is natural to mull over in your head. What did I do wrong?
Yeah.
Did I do that? Was it the mold? Was it the stress? Was it the was it because of the, where he put it in your uterus, or the progesterone, or there was like so many things that I remember you just trying to figure out, like, what was it? And that is such a natural thing because we don't want that to happen again. And your brain wants to fix it and wants to know. And it's really tricky not to blame, ourselves for that, because there's nothing that we can do about it anyways. And I just want to give reverence to that little girl that I know that you wanted so badly.
Thank you. Yeah. And, whether people believe in this or not, I connect a lot with like intuitive healers and stuff. And one thing that I found peace in along this process is connecting with my baby souls. And, whether people, again, balk at this or not, it's something that feels true to me. And after that episode went down, I reached out to my favorite one, and she connected with my next baby, who is supposed to be a boy. according to him. And he was always supposed to be second. There wasn't supposed to be anyone between him. And so, they told me, my guides and whoever, said, there's nothing wrong with your body. There's nothing you did wrong. This wasn't ever meant to be what was meant to be. And it's so hard to know. And, people get triggered in the infertility space when people use that kind of language of like, well, it just wasn't meant to be. Like, that can be really triggering. But for me, I find a lot of peace in that. And in hindsight, I wish I would have reached out to them before I did the transfer of the second embryo. Because maybe there really wasn't anything that could have happened, and actually maybe it was a gift that they gave me to have this experience of my whole world coming crashing down, so that I would reevaluate and take a break and sort of have a pattern interrupt of the intensity of this like snowball that I was on that needed to just be like interrupted really severely. So in looking back, I find that as a gift, and I am now at the place where I can like connect with that little girl embryo and see that she gave me a gift. It didn't feel like that at the time, but this is what processing and healing. And, I go to lots of healers and people that help me process emotions and stuff. And that's the place that I'm at now, where I do see it as a gift. And I do see it that if I had been pregnant at that time and had just rolled right into that from where I was, I don't think it would have been good personally. So, and clearly I needed even more of a break because January wasn't right either. And given the crazy storms and stuff that were happening, that would have been another really intense and crazy time. And I'm really grateful, actually, in hindsight, that it didn't work out in January. So
Yeah, we had the most snow that we've had in years in those days where you would have had to drive all the way across the valley to get blood work like every couple days. Yeah, that would have been really tough, really hard.
And then travel in to California, and they're having like flash flooding. It's just like it was a weird time. So it's nice to have like kind of cooped up and been here. But that's kind of my update. And I'm kind of at the mercy of, I always tell my sister how IVF is hard for me because I feel like we play God, because we get to decide when we get pregnant and what embryos we choose and all of these things. And, she told me after this, she's like, I know this is like really hard to hear, but in a way, you don't get to play God, because really what is meant to be comes about. It just is in a different kind of way. And, we think we have all this control with IVF, and we think that we can like manipulate and do whatever we want. Like, well, I'm going to have two girls, I'm going to have sisters. I was completely attached to that idea. And it's like, well, that's not what's in the plan. So that's not what's meant for whatever. And maybe that's for our highest good. And it's hard to know that now, but it definitely was humbling for sure.
Yeah. Oh, I love you.
So I love you too. So tell us about your update. I'm sorry that took a long time.
No, thank you for telling. And I know that it's a vulnerable thing to share that as well, being in this space. And I feel the same way because you and I are sort of these like experts in infertility or experts in pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and motherhood, and And it's like, that doesn't mean that we don't struggle with these exact things that we're helping people with. We still do help people. And most of the time, really good healers or people who give advice in these different ways find that work because they had struggle or continue to in a certain area. So in a kind of way, postpartum has always been so hard for me, but this one was really different. And I think I had such an expectation. I think what I've learned from this fourth baby is expectations ruin everything.
Yeah.
Like,
yep, me too.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like that was kind of a theme for both of us. Like, and I really, there's a difference between holding a vision for yourself of what you want to happen and then also like really deeply believing it and expecting it to happen. And I think I've mentioned this before about how that expectation game affected the birth because I really, my births had just only gotten easier and easier and more enjoyable. And I kind of thought like that would be the way it was with Sunday's birth. And it was only slightly easier than my first birth, which was really long, really hard, and back labor and all the things. But I would say for sure her birth was the second hardest of the four. And then now with her postpartum, it's just been like, man, I really thought fourth time around, I'm going to be an expert at this. I got it. I know what to do. I know how to manage things. And it's not like we're the only player in this game. There is also this other soul and spirit and a baby that you're trying to bring in, and we don't have control, and you don't get to make it. You don't get to just crush your plans upon this other person whether that's trying to get pregnant with them while you're pregnant, while you're postpartum, etc., in the middle of the birth. It is a dance between two people, and the other person is a baby that you don't even know yet.
Yeah. So weird.
And you can't like talk to them and negotiate and be like, can we do it like this, please? Because this isn't really working for me. It's sort of like you're almost at their mercy in a lot of ways. And I think that prior generations used to think for sure that we were the ones that were in control always. And you just make the baby cry it out on day 2 of life. And then they sleep through the night and then it's always fine. Oh, no, that was fine for my baby. It's like, whoa. No, this is not okay. We're not making babies cry it out on day 2 of life. Like I was reading a post about that the other day and it just broke my heart. I started crying. I was like, this poor child, I cannot even believe that was the situation they were put under. But this is a cultural thing. This is a cultural problem where we have these expectations that we get to just do whatever we want with children and like they just have to live in our lives. And it's like, no, this is, and it's because we think that. I get why we think that, because that's the only way it seems feasible to work in this modern society and be separated from them and do all these things in isolation like we are, because we shouldn't be like this. We should be in community, and then we can be, in flow and in flux and in relationship with them in the way that things are working. But it's really, really hard when that's not the case, when you don't have that community and you are living under such modern stressors. We do the best we can to mitigate it, but we're not immune to it. So anyway, my postpartum with Sunday, I really expected her to be this like 4th easy baby too. I was told that multiple times by other intuitives and healers. And I think now though I can see underneath this whole laryngomalacia thing that she has, which I'll explain, she is a very, very sweet soul. And I feel so connected to her. And I'm surprised that I sort of feel such a deep connection to her because it has been so hard. And you'd think that like, well, at least my first experience of postpartum, because it was so hard, I didn't feel connected to him.
Right.
And I was kind of like off in this other place in like survival mode. And with her, maybe it's just because I have perspective that I know it goes so fast because I already have other kids, or because she's the last for sure. Like, and I know people roll their eyes at me and they're like, yeah, okay, but no, she is the last. Like, unless there's an accident. But we are not going to be intentionally having other kids. And I'm going to try really hard to intentionally not have any other children, because I go to a really dark place in postpartum and I don't want to experience that again. Like, I don't want to put my family through that. I don't want to feel it again. And I didn't feel this way with my second postpartum. That one was like my one little redemptive beam of light. Like Savi's postpartum was so good. And I don't really exactly know why. I mean, I supported myself in a lot of different ways, but this 4th baby, I supported myself even more, probably with more food, more meal trained stuff, more herbs, more body work. And thank God I did. I think for her this time around, it was so tricky because she has this breathing issue called laryngomalacia. So laryngo, like larynx, and then malacia means soft. So where her vocal cords are, there is in her larynx, there's a ring of cartilage that should hold it open so that when you're breathing in and out, it just is open. The airway's patent, it's open. And hers is floppy. It's like not strong enough. And so it collapses in whenever she inhales. And so it goes like, and it makes this stridor sound. It's called stridor, stridor. That's like the medical term. And so she's very loud in her breathing. But more than anything, for her, it's just affected her feeding so much, because instead of a newborn or a baby in general having a suck, swallow, breathe, she goes suck, swallow, breathe, suck, swallow, breathe, suck, swallow, breathe, breathe, because it catches. It'll kind of go, and then she chokes and gags and aspirates the milk and then swallows a ton of air, and it's just a mess. And I have a really fast letdown. She has a very weak mouth. She was lip and tongue tied. I mean, it's like this combination of factors that could not be worse.
God.
So the milk is just shooting into her mouth. Her tongue is very weak and has a hard time managing the flow in general. But then now also the way she breathes, she cannot just maintain like a normal breath. Now that she's 3 months old, it's getting way better. Everything is getting way, way, way better. But it was so bad when she was a newborn. I mean, it was a total mess. I would be completely covered in milk. Everything around me was completely covered in milk because she'd pop off and it was spraying, or she would just immediately like barf it back up all over me. She was spitting up all day long. She dropped off her growth curve. Like from week to week, she was still gaining weight, but she had dropped from the 75th percentile to the 50th percentile in just a couple of weeks. And it was just going down, down, down. The pattern looked bad. It didn't look good. Right. And I was trying to get her to take a bottle and she couldn't. She still can't. She doesn't. Like we're trying. She screams her head off, bloody murder in the car. But here I am trying to take her to all these body work and lactation appointments because they were really helpful. But just
Mhm.
the stress of all of it and not sleeping because she was really loud at night. And a lot of laryngomalacia babies have a component that she does not have, thank God. But they can have cyanotic events. Cyanosis,
Oh,
meaning like,
jeez.
yeah, they turn blue and they can't breathe
Mhm.
because literally it's almost like their vocal cord, that area kind of gets stuck together and then they are like trying to inhale and they can't and then their face turns blue and I'm just like, "Oh my god, that wasn't happening to her," but I didn't really know that that wasn't going to maybe start for her. So
Right.
all the time I'm monitoring her, watching her, staring at her, making sure she's got her, she's not turning dusky, which is like maybe where their lips start to turn a little purple or blue, like where they're not getting enough oxygen. It's like, golly,
Jeez.
jeez, and some of these babies too need surgery and swallow studies and all these different things. And we were pretty confident between the pediatrician and I that like that wasn't going to be the case for her. It was, I didn't go see an ENT, but things have not gotten to the point where I felt like I needed to yet.
Mhm.
Um, and the nature of laryngomalacia too is that it gets worse before it gets better. So here she is like 3-4 weeks, and I'm like, whoa, like looking
Oh
forward into the
gosh.
future, thinking, wait a minute, it's going to get worse than this?
Oh,
Like, how is it gonna get worse than this? What does that even mean? And then my lactation consultant, who's had a lot of experience with these babies, said that for her and her experience, it peaks around like 3-4 months. That's like the worst of it, and then it starts to get better. The pediatrician said that his experience is that it's almost completely gone in every single baby by 2 years of age.
oh god.
I was like, okay, just trying to like, it's so hard being constantly frustrated. I have a
Yeah.
big problem with frustration. That's probably like the most annoying emotion to me. It probably is that way for a lot of people. I'm not triggered by sadness. Like I have a very like easy pathway of crying. I know that's an area where you and I differ because I cry like
Totally.
every day.
I wish I did. That'd be great.
Not every day, but I mean, it's easy for me to access that emotion and it flows easily and I deal with it. But frustration, it's like I don't know what to do with it. I don't know, and
Mm.
it just like builds up inside of me, and I'm like, ah, and I just want to like freak out, and so I'm trying to manage that better. But like with having already 3 other kids and I'm homeschooling, we get no breaks from them.
Mm.
Overall, very, very little childcare. Where there is family in town, but it's not like they want to come over every day or even every
Mhm.
week consistently. Like we've had more care, more help than I think the average Joe Schmo because we had people here on the property and we have opportunities where like even just for 20 minutes something can happen. Like somebody, when my mother-in-law was here, she was here for like 2 weeks and really helpful, like over in the house all day, every day, helping. And that was amazing. And then she goes back to Arizona though. So then she was gone. And my parents live in town, but they're 35 minutes away. And so they'd come for an afternoon and then, we wouldn't see them for a week or whatever. And hired childcare really shifted because our main nanny went to college. And so anyways, it
Mhm.
was sort of like you were saying too, with like
Mhm.
childcare. And you and I were both trying to figure it out. We were like, can we find somebody that we share? Like,
Yeah.
how are we going to do this? So it was a combination of a lot of stuff. And my husband is amazing and picked up so much. I mean, all of the other responsibilities, but then I feel guilt about that because I'm
Yeah.
like, well, first of all, I'm not out there interacting with my other children, like we talked about in one of my immediate postpartum episodes. But it's like if I could draw a picture of myself and put all of the words that are in my thought bubbles at all times, like I'm not doing enough here. My relationship with them is slipping. I don't know. I'm not a good wife anymore. Wait, is my baby going to stop breathing? Like how many loads of laundry am I going to do every single day to manage this amount of spit up? Like, and then, going into these weigh-ins and checking her weight and being like, oh my God, okay, where is she at? And it was really, I think sometimes the metrics of babies and weight gain and breastfeeding, people can get really, really wigged out about it and they can get a little too specific where they're like, they have apps and they're, oh, my baby fed 7.5 minutes on my left breast and 5 minutes on my
Mhm.
right breast. And they can get really into the numbers of everything. And I think if everything's going normal, I would not suggest doing that because it just isn't like helpful. But in my
Mhm.
situation, everything wasn't normal. So I really needed to be tracking this. And this is something I don't like to do. I don't
Right.
want to be a slave to these numbers. And I wanted to just be in flow and enjoy her as my last baby and like recover and try to keep my mental health as like try to keep my head above the water. But I just like felt like I couldn't. Like nothing was easy. It was like around every turn, everything was hard. And
And like you've had that, I feel like so many
oh
times.
my god, I know, and this is why I can't have any more kids. Like, I just
Mhm.
can't, and I mean, my husband's older, he's 42, he'll be 43 this year, and I know that that's not, like, older. I'm 34. I have a lot of years of potential kid making years. And that's what makes me nervous too, because I'm sort of like, yeah. So I think we probably are looking into vasectomy, which I know is in the natural community is, not all that supported sometimes, but on the flip side of having like hyperfertility, gosh, you and I, it's so interesting. We are literally yin and yang
I know.
in so many ways, but I love it because we have these complementary experiences that,
Mm-hmm.
but then we're also like our core personalities are really similar, and that's why we're best friends. But
I know. We are the best of
we're the
friends.
best of
Yeah. My
friends.
husband has that built-in vasectomy, which is really fun. We just
And
have to do really weird things to get around it. And you have the opposite of that. And you're like, we need to get this snipped
yeah, and
going.
I'm like, oh my god, don't look at me the wrong way, or we're gonna get pregnant again. And I don't, and I'm like, it's like a fear I have now, where I'm like,
Yeah.
like I don't. Okay, I guess we're gonna be using condoms for a little while until we figure this out because I'm not taking any chances, and I don't have a regular cycle because I'm breastfeeding.
Right.
And I can't do my tracking the way that I would like to. And so I'm very nervous about it.
Yeah.
There is such a thing as getting pregnant off of a sperm that's found in pre-cum.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
So
100%.
100%. Sunday Monroe is a really good example of that. And I'm so happy she's here. And I don't want any more kids. So, like, what are we going
Mm-hmm.
to do? I feel so, I'm like, oh, because I just, yes, like always I'm like this with 3 months. Like now she's 3 months and she is literally like the light of my life. She is pure joy.
Mm-hmm.
Her laryngomalacia has calmed down a lot. So an update about that is that like there's many hours in the day cumulative now where she's completely quiet, where there's
Oh,
no sound.
good.
Or there's even more hours where it's very minor sound. And then when she's feeding, unless she's really upset, like she's been crying for some reason, like if we get out of the car and she's been scream crying the whole time that she's been in the car, and then I go and I immediately try to sit down and nurse her, she's so worked up that her breathing is really fast, and that will have like a really chaotic feed right then. But if I can calm her down first, or if just throughout the day, we're home, we're putzing around, whatever, she wakes up from a nap, I feed her, she's doing so much better with her feeds. Like
Good.
she's able to handle my letdown. And also I think for her, I got her on, we've troubleshooted so many different things. And that's one other thing that drains my energy so much is troubleshooting. I
Yeah.
hate troubleshooting. And I don't think anybody likes it, but my husband is such a person where like every time he tries something, he'll do it a little bit differently to see if it goes better, and that wears on me. I just want to like find my routine and like stick
Mm-hmm.
to it. But I mean, obviously we need to have a little bit more resilience with that. But so we were troubleshooting these different ways. Like at one point I was feeding her every hour to see if that would help with her weight gain or to help with her reflux. Then it was like, okay, she was just spitting up all day long. But then we were thinking, well, maybe she's getting still more milk in than she's spitting out, so she'll overall gain, etc. But now what I think works best for her is to really follow that eat, play, sleep, which is what you're
Yeah.
meant to do anyways with them. But with her, felt like I couldn't really do that for a while because I had to keep getting milk back into her. But now that works really well because when she wakes up from a nap, she's actually really hungry. So she's so much more engaged at the breast, and she's
Mm.
like really interested in that fast letdown. And so she's taking it in. Also, her tongue has gotten so much stronger. And I really largely, I mean, we've been doing so much body work. So she gets chiropractic every other week and then craniosacral once or sometimes twice a week. We've been doing that for like a month, about twice a week. And it's so much. It's like so much work and so much hoopla and the driving and all these different things. But I have never seen such a transformation in my life. Craniosacral therapy for certain babies is absolute magic. I wish I learned how to do it. I wish I knew.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like some point in my life I'll figure it out, but and take a class. But it's phenomenal for my kids. And so it has really been worth it to me. But I also think a huge factor in her strength of her mouth has been the Ninny pacifier. So the Ninny Co pacifier, which we'll put a link in
Good.
the show notes. It has, because the babies have to latch onto it like a breast. It's a
Mm-hmm.
very, very soft silicone. So, if your baby has a crappy latch, they may have a harder time taking the Ninny. But let me tell you, Sunny literally didn't even know what to do with it initially. And I would just try for a couple of minutes, like twice a day. And over time, over a couple of weeks, she'd start to suck on it a little bit. And then maybe she'd be able to, over the course of a couple of weeks of just doing that, she'd start to be able to hold it in her mouth on her own. And she's still not like able to hold it in her mouth for, an hour or something like that. But for several minutes in a row, and then it'll kind of fall out and I put it back in and she sucks on it again. And it has really helped her latch overall.
Good.
So I know it's really cool.
So would you recommend that for any baby, even who doesn't have an issue? Like any baby could have the Ninny pacifier. Like basically that's the
Yeah,
one.
especially a breastfed baby, because it
Oh,
will
that's good to
not
know.
damage their palate. It will not make their palate
Oh,
more narrow. It will, if anything, help, because it is mimicking breastfeeding. It's the most breast-like pacifier that there is.
cool.
So, I've been really pleased with that. So anyway, that it feels like for me with all of the babies, and I'm in the middle of experiencing it right now, like this week and last week, is that they creep up closer to 12 weeks, and like it's hyperbolic improvement in all
Yeah.
regards. Like, what is that? It's like, boom, like she just feels so embodied now. She's like smiling and laughing, and she
Mm.
has like such clear preferences. She's playing with toys. She's rocking her tummy time. Her sleep is a little bit more predictable. Like everything seems to have just like really improved and turned a corner, which thank God, because it's kind of like it seems with children in general that whenever they're in a phase, my mom always says this, like whenever they're in a phase it's tough, like maybe they're always fighting you at bedtime or whatever it is, right when you're sort of like just about to just completely break down and freak out about it because it's so hard, they like snap out of it, and then
Hmm.
the phase ends and they change and they like the regression ends or whatever it is that's happening. I really feel like that's been true with her. So um that's where we're at now. She's just 3 months yesterday, and
Mm.
it I'm like, wow, okay, cool. It still doesn't make me want to have another baby. I look at my four and I'm like, this is our family. Like, and I really
Yeah.
am looking forward to kind of the next phase of just, moving on to having not running it back to having a newborn again. As much as
Yeah.
I like love pregnancy and I love birth, I just know myself and I
Yeah.
think I would be really pushing it.
You
And
can just be with me and my newborns.
yes, I will, and I will love that. And I mean, I still only have a 3-month-old. Like, I'm still in that fit. Like, your son is going to be only a they're gonna be born within the same year. Well, no, maybe
Yeah.
not. Maybe not 2020. Oh, no.
No.
No, she was born in 2023. Okay, but they're still gonna be probably, like,
They'll be a
within
year apart.
yeah, like, 1 calendar year apart. Like, that's gonna
Hmm.
be nothing in the grand scheme of things. So,
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, it's been really hard, and I super appreciate everything that my husband has done and friends and family and like you guys coming over and making me parchment salmon, doing all sorts of different things. And, the food has been key. The supplements have been key because when there's so many factors outside of your control, there's only a couple things you really can control. And it's like trying to eat the best you can, take your supplements the best you can, like get outside once a day at least, like go on a walk or do something. Oh, and
Hmm.
additionally, you and I have both found a lot of joy over this winter in our smutty romance books.
Totally. Oh my gosh. Our like really intense fantasy, like wild books. I've never been happier.
It's so much fun, and I would have
It's
never I know
so
you've read
fun.
these kinds of books for a long time, and I just
Hmm.
never have, and I'm so happy that I've gotten into it because I can really see now why this has always been something that you really liked, but you did stop for years and you're reconnecting with that part of your life, and it's just so nice to not read something where you're constantly trying to learn. Like, I'm over
I
it. I'm over
know.
constantly trying to
I
learn at
know.
every
I'm over
corner.
it too. And this is, something I told my husband. The feminine energy is needed for fertility and for motherhood and all of these things, the feminine essence. And it's the opposite of the masculine, right? That's like always going and doing that troubleshooting you're talking about. That's so masculine. That's
Mhm.
probably why Wes is so good at it
Oh,
because he's such a
yeah.
masculine man.
Oh,
And the
interesting.
feminine is like just being for the sake of being. There is no agenda, there's no goal, there's no deadline, there's nothing. And reading fiction is such a feminine essence thing, and to the masculine is such a waste of time
That's so
because
funny.
there's nothing to it. There is no point. You're not gaining knowledge. You're not doing anything. It is reading and spending time for the pure sake of just pleasure and being. And, for us, like school pushes us so much into the masculine essence. And it's so hard to get out of that space. And that's kind of the space I was in, right, for so long, even though back in the day, like before I went to school, when I was in high school and college, it was such a part of my life. And so is dancing. Dancing and reading fiction are super, super feminine essence. There is no point to them. And that's the point. It is
Oh.
just for the sake of moving and flowing and being and creating and experiencing. And like that is the feminine. And it's so lacking in our society and for women in general. And so I think it's why so many women are so obsessed with like these books and stuff. It's not just because the books are good, but it's given them permission to be in the feminine. And I just think it's so great. And for me, it's really healing. It's healing for me and for my relationship. And, my relationship with my husband's even better. And he's like, what's different? Like, he had to go on a business trip and he came back and I was just like so happy and vibrant and alive. And it's like, I've been exercising more and reading fiction and dancing. And it's like, that's what I need. And that's what I needed to be doing probably this whole time. But instead I was troubleshooting. I was, doing all the things that you think are good, but really it's like stepping into that more. So yeah, it's so powerful medicine.
I know. I have really loved it. I'm so happy that I got pulled into this world because now there's so many series. There's so many, oh, well, you can read this one next. There's this one has 8 books in the series. I'm like, yes, cool. For the next several years of my life, I have something to read. And it is so just to have a different part of your brain stimulated is really, really, really nice. I'm highly enjoying it. It's been pivotal to my postpartum happiness as well. Like, I think it's like every night I get so excited. We put the kids down and a lot of the times I take a bath, but even if I don't, it's like Wes and I sit on the couch and he's kind of dilly-dallying on his phone trying to figure out different things he wants to build on our property. And I'm reading the book next to him and I'm just like loving it. It makes me so happy and so excited. So anyway, I think that it's important for us to just be sharing this kind of information with you guys because we are going through a lot of the same things that you are. And if there's anything that we could say that would help, maybe trying to read a fiction book and see if that helps improve your mood or to, just know that you're not alone in these situations. Also, so that you guys can understand kind of where we're coming from with our podcast break and we're back in action and we're going to do the best we can with it. I mean, it is still it's a challenge, but it's been exciting to hear all the positive feedback that people are enjoying it. And, we like it too, because we like this long form conversation of being able to discuss different topics. So welcome to season 4, everybody. Here we are.
Yay. Oh my gosh. And we'll put the link for the books that we're reading right now in the show notes.
Yes. The show notes will be a good little resource.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Healthy as a Mother podcast. In order for others to hear this information, please leave a review with Apple Podcasts, subscribe, and send to a friend who could benefit from this content. We're so excited to share more on becoming and being a mother next time.
And please remember that the ideas and views of this podcast are for informational purposes only and are not intended to serve as a substitute for medical care of any kind, including the diagnosis or treatment of any illness or disease. Consult with your provider before integrating this information into your own care plan. And remember, a healthier future starts now and it starts with you.